The silence in the ballroom was louder than the applause had been. It wasn't the rejection that froze the room, but the look of sheer revulsion on her face when he tried to fix her necklace, a gesture of care she treated like an assault. He didn't scream, didn't demand answers. He simply lowered his hand, straightened his tie, and walked out into the snow, leaving behind a life that was already a corpse. If the quiet devastation of a love that ends not with a bang, but with a terrifying silence speaks to you, stay with me, because the loudest truths are often the ones we never say. The ballroom of the Fairmont Copley Plaza was a sea of black ties, sequin gowns, and the distinct, muted murmur of Boston's old money. Outside, a nor'easter was burying the city in snow, but inside, the air was warm, scented with expensive perfume and roasted duck. Nathan adjusted his silk tie, his fingers feeling stiff. He had been in surgery less than 4 hours ago, a 6-hour thoracic reconstruction on a car crash victim. His eyes burned with a fatigue that coffee couldn't touch, but he was here. He was always here. Smile, Nathan. You look like you're at a funeral. Sophia's voice floated toward him, sharp and clipped. He turned to look at his wife. She was breathtaking. Sophia wore a silver gown that shimmered like liquid mercury, her blonde hair swept up in an intricate chignon. She was the center of the room, the director of the foundation, the senator's daughter. She was glowing, vibrating with an energy that Nathan knew wasn't just adrenaline. It was him. Liam. Nathan scanned the room and found him instantly. Liam stood near the bar, nursing a whiskey, his eyes locked on Sophia. He was young, 28 maybe, with the hungry look of a political shark who had just tasted blood. Nathan looked back at Sophia. She was laughing too loudly at a donor's joke, her hand touching her throat nervously. I'm just tired, Soph, Nathan said quietly, stepping closer to shield her from the crowd's view. But you look beautiful. The speech was perfect. You didn't even listen to it, she snapped, keeping her smile fixed for the photographer's flashing bulbs nearby. You were checking your pager. I was checking on a patient's vitals. He's 12 years old, Nathan replied, his voice even, practicing the same calm he used when an artery burst mid-surgery. Always the hero, she muttered, rolling her eyes. A photographer from the Boston Globe waved at them. Dr. Vance. Sophia. One photo together, please. Sophia sighed, a sound of performative suffering, and stepped next to him. She didn't lean in. She stood rigid, leaving a noticeable inch of air between their bodies. Nathan saw it then, the diamond necklace he had bought her for their 10th anniversary. It was twisted, the clasp caught on the delicate lace of her neckline. It looked messy, out of place in her curated perfection. Hold on, Nathan murmured. Your necklace. He reached out. His hands, insured for millions, steady enough to stitch a nerve ending, moved slowly toward her neck. It was a gesture of intimacy, of a husband wanting his wife to look her best. He wanted to fix it. That's what he did. He fixed things. As his fingertips brushed the warm skin of her nape, Sophia reacted as if he were holding a scalpel. She jerked away, her shoulder colliding with his chest, her eyes flashing with a sudden, unfiltered hatred. Don't touch me, she hissed. The words were low, but in the small bubble of silence around them, they landed like a gunshot. The photographer lowered his camera, confused. A nearby couple, friends of her father, froze mid-sip of their champagne. Nathan's hand remained in the air for a fraction of a second before he slowly curled his fingers into a fist and dropped it to his side. He looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the dilated pupils, the flush on her chest, the way her body angled subconsciously toward Liam across the room. He realized then that there was nothing left to save. The tissue was necrotic. Sophia, he said. It wasn't a question. It was a goodbye. Just stop, she whispered, looking flustered, smoothing her dress, refusing to meet his eyes. You're smothering me, Nathan. Give me some space. Space, Nathan repeated. The word tasted like ash. He looked around the opulent ballroom. He looked at the life he had bankrolled, the status he had supported, the woman he had loved since residency. Okay, he said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't look at Liam. He simply nodded to the photographer, a polite, professional nod. Excuse me, Nathan said to the small circle of people watching. I have to return to the hospital. Nathan, don't you dare leave me here alone. Sophia hissed under her breath, panic flashing in her eyes. Not because she missed him, but because of how it would look. You wanted space, Sophia, Nathan said, his voice devoid of anger, cold as the blizzard outside. You have it. He turned and walked away. He walked past the open bar, past the senator, past the coat check. He stepped out into the biting cold of Copley Square. The wind hit him, sharp and cleansing. He took out his phone. He didn't call the hospital. He called his lawyer. It's Nathan, he said, watching his breath plume in the icy air. Execute the separation protocol. Tonight. Inside, Sophia took a deep breath, grabbed a glass of champagne, and caught Liam's eye. She smiled, thinking she had won a battle. She didn't realize she had just lost the war. The interior of the Mercedes was a vacuum of silence, broken only by the rhythmic, thumping cadence of the windshield wipers battling the heavy wet snow. Nathan drove with both hands on the wheel at 10 and 2, his knuckles white, his posture rigid. He passed the turn for Mount Vernon Street, the turn that would lead him back to the brownstone, to the Egyptian cotton sheets, to the lingering scent of Sophia's perfume. He didn't blink. He didn't turn. He kept the car moving forward, merging onto Starrow Drive, the black water of the Charles River invisible to his left, swallowed by the storm. 20 minutes later, he pulled into the reserved parking garage of Massachusetts General Hospital. The concrete structure was cold, lit by buzzing fluorescent tubes that cast long, sickly shadows. This was his church. This was the only place where the rules made sense. If something is broken, you fix it. If it cannot be fixed, you remove it before it kills the patient. He turned off the engine, but sat in the dark for a long moment. The heat of the engine ticked as it cooled. Nathan looked at his phone. No missed calls. No texts. Sophia was likely still at the gala, perhaps complaining to her friends about his rudeness. Or perhaps she was finally allowing Liam to buy her a drink without looking over her shoulder. He pocketed the phone and exited the car, the wind whipping his tuxedo jacket as he walked toward the staff entrance. The security guard at the desk looked up, surprised. Dr. Vance? I thought you were off tonight. Big charity thing, right? Change of plans, Miller, Nathan said. His voice was steady, normal. He swiped his badge. The beep was sharp and definitive. He bypassed the trauma bay, ignoring the chaotic shouts of residents managing a multi-car pileup, and took the elevator straight to the administrative floor. His office was dark and smelled faintly of antiseptic and old paper. He didn't turn on the overhead lights. The glow of the city through the window was enough. Nathan sat at his desk, still wearing his tuxedo. He felt like an actor who had walked off stage in the middle of a play. He opened his laptop, the screen illuminating his tired face in a harsh blue light. He didn't open patient charts. He opened the bank portal. For 10 years, Nathan had managed everything. Sophia claimed to be allergic to administration, a charming quirk that meant she spent money and he made sure the accounts balanced. He looked at the joint checking account. There was a pending charge from the Copley Plaza bar, $200. Champagne. His jaw tightened. He logged into the primary account, the one his salary flowed into, the one that paid the mortgage, the credit cards, the country club dues, and the lease on her studio. He initiated a transfer. He moved 70% of the liquid assets, his premarital savings, and his inheritance, into a holding account she had no access to. It wasn't theft, it was protection. He left enough for the bills, enough so she wouldn't starve, but he cut off the excess. Next, he pulled up the credit card portal. The black card she carried, the one she used to buy the dress she was currently wearing to impress another man. Status, active. Nathan clicked report lost/stolen. Status, frozen. He moved to the digital locks of their home. He opened the smart home app. He considered changing the code immediately, locking her out in the snow. His finger hovered over the button. The anger flared in his chest, hot and suffocating. No, he thought. I am not a monster. I am a surgeon. He left the door codes alone. He wouldn't lock her out. He would simply remove himself from the inside. He closed the laptop. The fan whirred into silence. Nathan stood up and walked to the small, attached on-call room. It was a bleak space, a twin bed with a plastic-covered mattress, a thin blanket, and a pillow that felt like a bag of rocks. It was designed for 20-minute naps between surgeries, not a full night's sleep. He took off his tuxedo jacket and hung it neatly on the back of the door. He loosened his tie, unbuttoned his shirt, and sat on the edge of the narrow bed. He should be crying. He knew that. A 10-year marriage had just died on the operating table. But all he felt was the strange, hollow calm of a postcode adrenaline crash. He had done everything he could. He had compressed the chest. He had pushed the meds. He had tried to breathe life into it. But the patient had said, "Don't touch me." Time of death, 8:45 p.m. Nathan lay down in the dark, staring at the acoustic tiles of the ceiling. The hospital hummed around him. The ventilation, the distant sirens, the vibration of a building that never slept. For the first time in years, he didn't have to worry if his breathing was too loud or if his tossing and turning would annoy Sophia. He closed his eyes. The silence in the small room was absolute, but unlike the silence in his marriage, this one didn't demand anything from him. He fell asleep instantly. The morning light filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Beacon Hill penthouse was blindingly bright, reflecting off the freshly fallen snow outside. Sophia groaned, shielding her eyes with a forearm, and rolled over. Her head throbbed with the dull, dehydrated ache of too much vintage champagne. She reached out instinctively to the other side of the California king bed. The sheets were cold. Not just cool from someone having risen an hour ago, but icy, undisturbed, flat. Sophia sat up, pushing her silk eye mask up onto her forehead. The room was perfectly still. Usually, even when Nathan left early for the hospital, there was a lingering sense of his presence. The faint scent of his sandalwood shaving cream, the humidifier humming in the corner that he refilled every night, a glass of water left on her nightstand with 2 Advil if he knew she'd had a late night. Today, there was no water. No Advil. "Nathan," she called out. Her voice sounded thin in the expansive room. She waited for the familiar response, the deep voice from the walk-in closet or the clinking of a spoon from the kitchen. Silence. She threw off the duvet and slid her feet into her slippers. Irritation began to prickle at the back of her neck. He hadn't come home. It was unprecedented. In 10 years, even during their worst fights, Nathan always came home. He was a creature of habit, a man who believed in the sanctity of the marital bed, even if they slept back to back with a foot of distance between them. Unbelievable, she muttered, grabbing her robe. So dramatic. She walked out into the living area. The open concept space was pristine. The cleaning service came on Tuesdays, but this was different. It felt sterile. She walked to the kitchen, expecting the smell of fresh espresso. The gleaming Italian machine sat cold and dark. She stared at it, baffled. She didn't actually know how to operate it. Nathan had always just presented her with a cup, perfectly sweetened, the moment she walked in. She opened the refrigerator. It was fully stocked, but nothing was prepared. No sliced fruit. No yogurt set out. Fine. She snapped at the empty room. Be that way. Sulk. She assumed he had slept at the hospital to punish her. It was his classic move, passive-aggressive withdrawal. He wanted her to worry. He wanted her to call him, apologizing for the scene at the gala, begging him to come back and be her emotional anchor. Well, she wouldn't give him the satisfaction. She grabbed a bottle of sparkling water and retreated to the plush velvet sofa overlooking the Boston Common. The park below was a winter wonderland, white and pure, but inside, the air felt stale. She picked up her phone. 3 missed calls from her mother. 1 from her assistant. Nothing from Nathan. She bypassed them all and dialed Liam. He answered on the second ring, his voice husky with sleep. "Hey, you okay?" "I'm fine," Sophia said, leaning back and putting her feet up on the coffee table. Hearing his voice released a knot of tension in her chest. "Actually, I'm better than fine. I woke up alone." "He didn't come home?" Liam asked. There was a pause, a slight hesitation in his tone that Sophia missed. Did he blow up?" "No. He just disappeared." Sophia laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "He's trying to punish me. He played the martyr at the gala, marched off into the snow, and now he's probably sitting in his office waiting for me to call and beg for forgiveness. And are you going to? Absolutely not, Sophia said, tracing the pattern of the velvet with her fingernail. He embarrassed me, Liam. In front of the donors. He treated me like a child, trying to fix my clothes like I'm a doll. I told him to back off, and he couldn't handle it. His ego is so fragile. He's a surgeon. Sophomore god complex comes with the territory, Liam said, his voice smoothing out, finding its usual charming rhythm. But maybe you should check if he's actually angry. We have the fundraiser next week. We need the checkbook. Sophia bristled. We don't need him. I am the director of the foundation. My father is the senator. Nathan is just the husband. He writes the checks because it makes him feel important. Right? Of course, Liam said quickly. I just meant, I don't want you stressed. I'm not stressed. I feel free, she lied. She looked around the cavernous apartment. The silence was starting to feel less like peace and more like pressure. She needed noise. She needed admiration. Meet me for lunch. The Bristol. 1 o'clock. I want to celebrate. Celebrate what? My independence, Sophia said. And the fact that for the first time in a decade, I don't have a chaperone hovering over my shoulder. I'll be there, Liam said. Wear that red coat. The one that drives me crazy. Sophia hung up and smiled. She felt a surge of power. She had stood up to Nathan, and the world hadn't ended. The sun was still shining. She was still Sophia Vance. She stood up to get dressed, walking past the foyer table where the mail was usually stacked neatly by Nathan. It was empty. She ignored it. She went into the massive walk-in closet. Her side was overflowing with designer pieces. She glanced at Nathan's side. It looked normal at first glance. His suits were there, his shirts. But as she reached for her red coat, she paused. Something was off. The drawer where he kept his watches, the Patek Philippe, the Rolex, the vintage Omega her father had given him, was slightly ajar. She pulled it open. Empty. She stared at the velvet cushions. A small chill, colder than the air in the room, touched the base of her spine. She shook it off immediately. He probably took them to be serviced, she told herself. Or he's wearing one and took the others to the safe deposit box. He's obsessed with security. Just logistics, she whispered to the quiet room. Just Nathan being Nathan. She grabbed her coat and headed for the door, eager to escape the silence, eager to be seen, unaware that she was walking out of a sanctuary that no longer belonged to her. The Bristol Lounge was the kind of place where the silence was expensive. It was a hushed sanctuary of high-backed leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the public garden, and the soft clinking of silver against bone china. Sophia sat by the window, basking in the winter sun that streamed through the glass. The earlier anxiety of the empty apartment had evaporated after her second mimosa. Across the table, Liam was charming, attentive, and perfectly groomed. He was talking about her father's polling numbers, but his eyes were fixed on her lips. The demographic shift in the South End is tricky, Liam said, leaning in. But with the foundation's new initiative, I think we can lock down the suburban vote. You're the face of compassion, Sophia. People trust you. They trust the name, Sophia corrected playfully, twirling the stem of her glass. But I'll take the compliment. It's not just the name. It's the presence, Liam insisted. Nathan, he's a brilliant surgeon, sure. But he's a technician. You're the visionary. You're the one who makes people feel seen. Sophia smiled, preening under the praise. This was what she had been starving for. Nathan offered solutions. Liam offered adoration. We should order another bottle, Sophia said, signaling the waiter. And the caviar service. Why not? The lunch stretched on, a bubble of indulgence. For 2 hours, Sophia felt like the Queen of Boston. She ignored the 3 missed calls from her assistant, Jessica. She ignored the gnawing silence from her husband. Eventually, the bill arrived. It came in a leather folder, placed discreetly on the corner of the table. Allow me, Liam said, reaching for it. But his movement was slow, performative. He was a campaign strategist on a salary. This lunch cost more than his rent. Don't be silly, Sophia said, snatching the folder with a laugh. She opened it. $480. A drop in the bucket. She pulled out the black Centurion card, the heavy titanium rectangle that had been her magic wand for a decade. She placed it on the tray without looking up. It's on the house. Or rather, on the Van Cess, she winked. The waiter, a man named Charles who had served them for years, bowed and took the folder. Sophia went back to discussing the upcoming gala with Liam. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Charles returned. He didn't have the receipt. He held the card between 2 fingers, his expression pained. Mrs. Vance, he said softly, leaning down so only she could hear. I apologize, but the card was declined. Sophia froze. The smile didn't leave her face immediately, it just calcified. That's impossible. Run it again. It's a chip error. We tried 3 times, ma'am. The terminal says, card suspended, contact issuer. The heat rushed up Sophia's neck, turning her cheeks a violent shade of pink. She could feel Liam watching her. The admiration in his eyes flickered, replaced by a sharp curiosity. It must be a fraud hold, Sophia said, her voice rising slightly, too loud for the room. I'm traveling next week. Maybe Nathan flagged it early. God, he's so controlling with the security settings. She opened her purse, her hands trembling slightly. She dug for her backup card, a visa she kept for emergencies. She handed it over. Try this one. Charles took it and retreated. Sophia grabbed her phone. She needed to call Nathan. She needed to scream at him for embarrassing her. She dialed his personal cell. The subscriber you have called is not available. Straight to voicemail. He had blocked her? Or his phone was off? Her phone buzzed in her hand. It was Jessica, her assistant, calling for the 4th time. Sophia answered, snapping. What is it, Jessica? I am in a meeting. Sophia, thank God. Jessica sounded breathless, panicked. I'm at the venue for the fundraiser. The manager just told us we can't load in the equipment. What are you talking about? We have a contract. The liability insurance, Jessica stammered. It expired at midnight. The renewal payment didn't go through this morning, and the venue needs the signature of the primary policyholder to override it. So sign it. I can't. The primary policyholder is Dr. Vance. I've been calling the hospital, but his secretary says he's in meetings and gave strict instructions not to be disturbed for non-medical emergencies. Sophia felt the room tilt. The insurance, the credit card, the watch drawer. Charles returned to the table. He looked even more uncomfortable than before. Mrs. Vance, the visa is also declined. The silence at the table was deafening. Liam looked at the waiter, then at Sophia. He saw the panic in her eyes, the crack in the facade. The visionary was suddenly just a woman with no money and a husband who wasn't picking up the phone. Here, Liam said. His voice was flat. He pulled out a standard blue debit card. Take mine. Liam, no, I can't let you. It's fine, Sophia, he cut her off. He didn't look at her. He looked at the bill. Just pay it. Sophia sat paralyzed as the transaction was processed. The humiliation was physical, a nausea settling in her stomach. It wasn't just about the money. It was the realization that every door she walked through, every check she signed, every vision she had, was paved by Nathan's invisible hand. And he had stopped working. Liam signed the receipt. He stood up, checking his watch. The warmth was gone from his demeanor. I have to get back to the campaign office, he said. The senator is expecting a briefing. I'll come with you, Sophia said, scrambling to gather her purse. Better not, Liam said, not waiting for her. You should probably go to the bank. Sounds like a mess. He walked out, leaving her sitting alone at the table with 2 empty mimosas and a declined black card that was now just a piece of scrap metal. The heating unit in Liam's South End apartment rattled violently, a sharp contrast to the silent, invisible climate control of the Beacon Hill penthouse. Sophia sat on the edge of his low-slung, beige sofa, clutching a glass of wine that tasted acidic and thin. She had spent the last 4 hours in a humiliating purgatory, on hold with the bank, being transferred between departments, only to be told repeatedly that the primary account holder had initiated a security lockdown. She couldn't access the joint funds. She couldn't access the foundation's discretionary budget. She was frozen. He's insane, Sophia said, her voice tight with a mixture of rage and panic. He thinks he can starve me out. It's financial abuse, Liam. That's what it is. Liam was standing by the window, scrolling through his iPad. He hadn't sat down since she arrived. He was still wearing his work clothes, his tie loosened, the sleeves of his shirt rolled up. He looked distracted, tapping his foot rhythmically against the hardwood floor. Did you call the lawyer? Liam asked without looking up. I tried. The retainer is linked to the joint account, Sophia admitted, taking a large swallow of the wine. But that's not the point. The point is, he's trying to humiliate me. He wants me to crawl back. She set the glass down hard on the coffee table, leaving a wet ring on the wood. Liam flinched slightly at the sound. So what are you going to do? Liam asked. I'm going to destroy him, Sophia said, standing up and crossing the room to wrap her arms around Liam's waist from behind. She needed to feel him, to feel the heat of the passion that had made her feel alive for the last 6 months. I have you. We don't need his money. My father will fix this once the election is over. We just need to ride out the storm. Liam didn't lean back into her touch. He stood stiffly, his body tense. Sophia, he said, peeling her arms off him and turning around. His eyes were cold, calculating. We need to talk about the gala next week. Sophia blinked, confused by the pivot. The gala? Liam, my entire life is imploding, and you're worried about a party? It's not just a party. It's the final push for the campaign, Liam said, his voice dropping to a professional, condescending register. The Vance Foundation committed to the platinum table. $50,000. The press release has already gone out. I know that, Sophia snapped. I'm the director. Right? But if the accounts are frozen, Liam paused, looking at her with a scrutiny that made her feel small. That check is going to bounce, Sophia. And if a check from the senator's daughter bounces 2 weeks before Election Day, the press will eat us alive. They'll dig. They'll find out why the accounts are frozen. They won't find out, she insisted, though her stomach lurched. They will. If Nathan talks. Nathan won't talk. He's too proud. He doesn't have to talk, Liam cut in, stepping back. He just has to stop paying the bills. Look, Soph. Maybe you should go home. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. What? Sophia whispered. Go home. Liam repeated, softer this time, but with no warmth. Fix this. Apologize. Tell him it was a stress reaction. Whatever you have to do to get the cards turned back on. Sophia stared at him. She looked at the handsome face she had risked her marriage for. She saw the ambition etched into his jawline, the selfishness in his eyes. She realized suddenly that he didn't see her as a lover or a partner. He saw her as a donor. He saw her as a connection to her father. You want me to go back to him? Sophia asked, her voice trembling. I thought you said he was a bore. I thought you said I deserve passion. I said you deserve to be happy, Liam corrected, maneuvering around the words like a politician. But I can't support you, Sophia. I'm a consultant. I live paycheck to paycheck. If you leave him, if this gets messy, it compromises the campaign. It compromises me. He walked over to the door and picked up her coat, the red coat she had worn to impress him at lunch. He held it out to her. We can't be seen together right now, he said. Not until the finances are stabilized. It's too risky. Sophia looked at the coat. Then she looked at Liam. The heat in the apartment seemed to vanish, replaced by a deep, bone-chilling cold. She realized Nathan had never sent her away. Nathan had never cared about the risk. Nathan had just been there, solid as the ground beneath her feet, until she had kicked him away. She snatched the coat from Liam's hand. You're a coward, she spat out. I'm a realist, Liam replied, opening the door. Call me when the check clears. Sophia walked out into the hallway, the door clicking shut behind her with a finality that echoed in the stairwell. She stood there for a moment, listening to the silence. No Nathan. No Liam. No money. She buttoned her coat, her fingers numb, and walked out into the night, realizing she had nowhere to go but down. The phone call came at 2 a.m. Sophia was sitting in the lobby of the Liberty Hotel, nursing a glass of tap water she had charmed the night manager into giving her while she figured out where to sleep. Her cards were dead. Her lover had sent her away. She was contemplating sleeping in her car when the screen lit up. Mother. She answered, expecting a scolding about the rumors already swirling from the gala. Sophia? It's your father. Her mother's voice was a jagged tear of panic. He collapsed. Chest pains. The ambulance is taking us to Mass General. The phone slipped in Sophia's sweaty palm. I'm coming, she gasped. I'm 10 minutes away. She ran out of the hotel, flagging down a cab with the desperation of a madwoman. She threw her last $20, emergency cash she found in her coat pocket, at the driver and told him to drive fast. In the back seat, her fingers flew across her phone screen. She didn't call her mother back. She dialed Nathan. It was a reflex, hardwired into her nervous system. Nathan was the chief of trauma. Nathan was the reason her father got the corner suite, the best nurses, the immediate consults. Nathan was the fixer. The phone rang 4 times. Then, the line clicked open. Dr. Vance, he answered. His voice was crisp, alert, and completely devoid of warmth. It was the voice he used for insurance adjusters and hospital administrators. Nathan, it's Dad. Sophia choked out, tears finally spilling over. Mom says he collapsed. They're bringing him to you. Please, you have to be there. You have to. I am aware of the situation, Nathan interrupted. His tone was level, cutting through her hysteria. The senator's transport has been flagged. Dr. Patel is the attending cardiologist on call. He is excellent. The team is prepping Trauma Bay 1. Dr. Patel? Sophia asked, confused. But, you handle him. You always handle him. I am a trauma surgeon, Sophia. This presents as a cardiac event. It is outside my primary specialty, Nathan said. And given our current situation, it would be unethical for me to treat a family member. Dr. Patel is the best. He has the file. Unethical? She screamed, the cab swerving slightly as she leaned forward. He's your father-in-law. He trusts you. He is in good hands. Drive safely, Nathan said. The line went dead. When Sophia burst into the emergency department waiting area, the fluorescent lights hummed with a headache-inducing brightness. Her mother was sitting on a plastic chair, looking small and terrified, clutching her pearls. Where is he? Sophia asked, rushing to her. They took him back, her mother sobbed. Nathan met the ambulance. He looked right at me, Sophia. He checked the chart, told the nurses what to do, and then he walked away. He didn't even stay to hold my hand. Sophia felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. She looked toward the swinging double doors marked authorized personnel only. 10 minutes later, the doors opened. Nathan walked out. He was wearing navy blue scrubs and a white coat, a stethoscope draped around his neck. He looked exhausted, the shadows under his eyes dark purple, but he moved with that terrifying, efficient grace. He held a clipboard. Sophia and her mother stood up simultaneously. Sophia took a step toward him, her body aching for the familiar comfort of his embrace. She wanted him to tell her it would be okay. She wanted to bury her face in his chest. Nathan stopped 3 feet away from them. He didn't look at Sophia. He looked at her mother. Eleanor, he said gently, but professionally. The senator has stabilized. It was a minor myocardial infarction, a heart attack. Dr. Patel has inserted a stent. The blood flow is restored. He is waking up now. Oh, thank God. Her mother wept, reaching for Nathan's hand. Nathan allowed her to squeeze his fingers for a second, then pulled his hand back to check his watch. Nathan, Sophia whispered, stepping into his line of sight. Thank you. I was so scared. She reached out to touch his arm, to bridge the gap, to reclaim the connection she had severed the night before. Nathan took a half step back. It was subtle, smooth, but unmistakable. Her hand swiped at empty air. Dr. Patel will be out shortly to discuss the post-op care and medication regimen, Nathan said, addressing the space between them. I have arranged for a private room on the cardiac floor. That is the extent of what I can do. What do you mean? Sophia asked, her voice trembling. Aren't you staying? He's going to ask for you. I have a shift to finish, Nathan said, and I have made arrangements to sleep in the on-call quarters for the foreseeable future. If you need updates on the senator, page the resident. He looked at her then. For the first time since the gala, their eyes locked. Sophia searched for anger, for hate, for anything hot enough to burn. She found nothing. His eyes were like the steel of the instruments he used, clean, sterile, and cold. You have the insurance information, I assume? Nathan asked. Since the joint accounts are under review, you'll need to provide the foundation's guarantee for the private room upgrade. It's not covered by his standard policy. Sophia opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She didn't have the foundation card. She didn't have her own card. She had nothing. I left my wallet, she stammered. Nathan nodded, as if he expected this. He pulled a pen from his pocket, signed a form on the clipboard, and handed it to the passing unit clerk. I've authorized the room charge as a payroll deduction from my account, he said. Consider it a loan. Nathan, please, Sophia whispered, the humiliation burning her throat. Don't do this here. I'm not doing anything, Sophia, he said, turning his back to her. I'm doing my job. I suggest you go sit with your mother. She looks like she's in shock. He walked back through the double doors without looking back. The doors swung shut, the burst of air hitting Sophia in the face, smelling of rubbing alcohol and finality. Sophia, her mother asked, drying her eyes. Is everything all right between you and Nathan? He seems so distant. Sophia stared at the closed doors. He's just working, Mom, she lied, her voice cracking. He's just working. The silence in the penthouse was no longer just quiet, it was predatory. It felt heavy, settling into the corners of the room like dust. Sophia had returned from the hospital alone, her mother having stayed behind to hover anxiously over the senator's recovery room, a room paid for by Nathan's payroll deduction. Sophia walked into the apartment, shivering despite the heating. She needed access. She needed the passwords. She needed to regain control before the press caught wind of the frozen accounts. She stood before the double mahogany doors of Nathan's study. In 10 years, she had rarely entered this room. It was his clean zone, a place of medical journals, patient files, and the scent of old leather and sanitizer. She had always found it depressing, a shrine to his exhausting career. Now, she viewed it as a vault to be cracked. She pushed the doors open. The room was dark, the blinds drawn against the gray Boston sky. His desk was terrifyingly neat. No loose papers, no clutter. Just a laptop, locked, she knew, and a stack of leather-bound notebooks. Sophia sat in his chair. It was too big for her. She opened the drawers, rummaging for a checkbook, a sticky note with a password, anything. Top drawer, pens, arranged by color. Middle drawer, stethoscope, spare pager batteries. Bottom drawer, a heavy, cream-colored file folder. It didn't look like medical records. It wasn't labeled with a patient ID. It was handwritten in Nathan's sharp, precise script, sabbatical/Villa d'Est. Sophia frowned. Sabbatical? Nathan Vance didn't take sabbaticals. He barely took weekends. She opened the folder. The first document was a printed email correspondence with the chief of surgery at Mass General. The date was from 3 months ago, right around the time Sophia had started sleeping with Liam. Nathan, the email read, I hate to lose you, even for a year, but I understand. Burnout is real, and family comes first. Your request for a 12-month leave of absence beginning January 1st is approved. Sophia's breath hitched. January 1st. 2 weeks from now. She turned the page. It was a real estate listing for a villa in Tuscany. A farmhouse with a painting studio, a real studio, with north-facing light, overlooking a vineyard. There were notes in the margins in Nathan's handwriting. Good light for her. Close to the city, but quiet. She needs the quiet. Internet connection, minimal. Good. Cooking classes nearby? She mentioned wanting to learn pasta. Tears pricked Sophia's eyes, hot and sudden. She flipped through the rest of the file. There were flight confirmations. 2 tickets. First class. One way. There was a receipt for a Rosetta Stone Italian course. And at the very back, a letter. It was handwritten, unfinished, likely a draft he intended to include with the surprise on Christmas morning. Soph, I know I've been absent. I know the hospital takes too much of me, and I've left you alone in the cold. I see you fading. I see you looking for something else, something more alive. I want to be that for you again. Let's go away. No pagers, no galas, no politics. Just us. Let's rebuild the foundation before the cracks get too deep. I love you more than this job. I hope this proves it. Sophia dropped the letter. It fluttered to the desk, landing next to the stapler. She stared at the date on the flight confirmation. He had booked it the morning after she had come home at 3 a.m., smelling of Liam's cheap cologne, claiming she had been networking. Nathan hadn't accused her. He hadn't screamed. He had gone to work and booked a flight to Italy to save her soul. And what had she done? She thought back to the gala. The way he had reached for her neck. He wasn't just fixing her necklace. He was trying to touch her, to connect, to bridge the gap before he whisked her away. And she had looked at him with disgust and told him to stop. She had chosen Liam, who wouldn't even pay for a salad, over a man who was willing to walk away from the height of his career just to give her a painting studio in Tuscany. Oh my God, Sophia whispered into the empty room. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. She wasn't the victim of a cold marriage. She was the arsonist who had burned down the only shelter she had. She grabbed her phone, her fingers trembling so hard she almost dropped it. She needed to call him. She needed to tell him she found the file. She needed to tell him yes. Yes to Italy. Yes to the studio. Yes to him. She dialed his number again. It rang once. Twice. Then, a click. This is Dr. Vance. The voicemail recording began. It was his standard greeting. Professional. Distant. But then, a beep cut it off. The mailbox was full. Sophia lowered the phone. She looked at the empty chair opposite the desk. She imagined him sitting there late at night, planning this trip, looking at photos of Italian vineyards while she was in bed texting Liam. She curled forward, burying her face in her hands. And for the first time since the gala, the silence of the apartment was broken by the sound of genuine, gut-wrenching sobbing. Sophia was still sitting in Nathan's leather chair, the tear-stained file of the Italian villa open in front of her, when her phone began to vibrate. It wasn't a call. It was a relentless, stinging succession of buzzes, text messages, notifications, news alerts, arriving so fast the phone danced across the mahogany desk like a trapped insect. She wiped her eyes and picked it up. The first text was from Jessica, her assistant. Don't check Twitter. Do not go outside. The second was from her mother. What have you done? The third was a link sent by a friend from the country club, with no text, just a heartbreak emoji. Sophia's fingers felt numb as she clicked the link. It opened a gossip column, the Boston Eye, usually reserved for B-list celebrities, but today, the headline was screaming in bold, black letters. The doctor is out. Senator's daughter caught in campaign love nest. Sophia stopped breathing. Below the headline were 3 photos. They were grainy, clearly taken with a long lens camera from a parked car or a window across the street. The first showed Sophia and Liam entering his South End apartment building 2 weeks ago. They were laughing, his hand resting possessively on her lower back, the same spot where Nathan had tried to touch her at the gala. The second was through the window of a cafe, their faces close, hands clasped on the table. The third was the kill shot. It was from last night. Sophia, wearing her red coat, standing in the doorway of his apartment building, looking distraught as Liam leaned in to whisper something. The caption read, "While Dr. Vance saves lives at Mass General, his wife seeks comfort with junior strategist Liam Calloway." The timestamp on the article was 20 minutes ago. It already had 4,000 shares. No, Sophia whispered, the room spinning. No. This was opposition research. Her father's political rivals had been tailing Liam, looking for dirt on the campaign staff. They hadn't expected to find the candidate's married daughter. The phone rang in her hand. It was her father's campaign manager, a man named Marcus who had known her since she was 6. Sophia, Marcus's voice was ice cold. "I'm putting you on speaker. The senator is sedated, thank God, so he doesn't know yet. But we are in damage control." "Marcus, I can explain." "You cannot explain." Marcus cut her off. "The narrative is already set. You are the spoiled socialite cheating on the city's most respected surgeon while your father is in the hospital. It's a PR massacre, Sophia." "Where's Liam?" Sophia asked, her voice high and desperate. "Put Liam on. We need to release a joint statement." There was a pause on the line. A heavy, pregnant silence. "Liam has been terminated from the campaign, effective 10 minutes ago," Marcus said. "He is currently scrubbing his social media, and has agreed to sign an NDA in exchange for a quiet exit. He won't be speaking to you, Sophia. He's gone. The floor seemed to drop out from under her. He agreed to that? He's a political operative, Sophia. He knows a sinking ship when he sees one. He chose his career over your reputation. Obviously. Sophia felt bile rise in her throat. Liam hadn't fought for her. He hadn't even called to warn her. He had cut a deal and run. I need Nathan, Sophia whispered, the realization crashing down on her. Marcus, call Nathan. He can fix this. If he releases a statement saying we're separated, or that it's complicated. We reached out to Dr. Vance's legal counsel, Marcus said. They informed us that Dr. Vance has no comment on his private life. He is currently in surgery and will not be engaging with the press. He is maintaining dignified silence, which, frankly, makes him look like a saint and you like a monster. He's not protecting me. Why should he? Marcus snapped. You publicly humiliated him at the gala, and now this? You're on your own, kid. My advice. Stay inside. Keep the blinds down. And for God's sake, don't post anything. The line clicked dead. Sophia slowly lowered the phone. She looked at the window. The blinds were already drawn, but she felt exposed, as if the millions of eyes on the internet could see right through the brick walls. She walked to the window and peered through a crack in the blinds. Down on the street, amidst the snowbanks, a news van was already pulling up to the curb. A camera crew was setting up on the sidewalk, their lenses pointed up at the penthouse, the fortress Nathan had built, the sanctuary she had defiled. She turned back to the room. The silence was gone. It was replaced by the phantom noise of judgment, a roar that was deafening. She looked at the file on the desk, Villa d'Est. The escape route. It was still there, but the ticket had her name on it, and she knew, with terrifying clarity, that she would never be able to use it. She was trapped in the wreckage she had created, and the only man who had the tools to dig her out had turned off his pager. The conference room on the 42nd floor of the Prudential Tower smelled of lemon polish and aggressive billable hours. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city of Boston was a gray, slushy grid, but in here, the air was climate-controlled and still. Sophia sat on one side of the massive granite table. She wore sunglasses, even indoors, to hide the puffiness around her eyes. She had spent the last 3 days trapped in the penthouse, dodging paparazzi lenses, eating dry toast, and waiting for the phone to ring. It hadn't. The door opened. Sophia flinched, sitting up straighter. Nathan walked in. He wasn't wearing his scrubs, nor the tuxedo from the gala. He wore a charcoal suit, perfectly tailored, with a crisp white shirt open at the collar. He looked infuriatingly healthy. His eyes were clear, his jaw freshly shaven. There was no sign of the sleepless nights or the heartbreak that was currently eating Sophia alive from the inside out. He was accompanied by a man Sophia recognized as Arthur Sterling, the hospital's most ruthless liability attorney. Sophia, Nathan said. He nodded to her, a polite, curt acknowledgement, as if she were a visiting pharmaceutical rep. He didn't sit opposite her. He sat at the head of the table, creating a deliberate distance. Nathan, she breathed, removing her sunglasses. She wanted him to see her eyes. She wanted him to see the pain. You look, well. I am, he said simply. He opened a file folder in front of him. Thank you for coming. I know the press situation is difficult. Arthur has arranged for you to exit through the service elevator to avoid the cameras. I don't care about the cameras, Sophia said, her voice shaking. She reached into her bag and pulled out the cream-colored folder she had stolen from his study. The Villa d'Est file. She slid it across the granite table toward him. Nathan looked at it. He didn't touch it. He didn't blink. I found this, she whispered. Nathan, I saw the tickets. I saw the letter. You were going to take me to Italy. You were going to give me the studio. She waited for his face to crumble. She waited for him to admit that he still loved her, that this legal meeting was just a scare tactic. Nathan looked at the file, then back at her. His expression was one of mild regret, like a doctor looking at a chart for a patient who had refused treatment until it was too late. That was a contingency plan, Nathan said softly, for a marriage that I believed was salvageable. The clinical data has changed, Sophia. The treatment plan has been updated. I'm not a patient, Nathan. I'm your wife. Sophia cried, slamming her hand on the table. I made a mistake. A horrible, stupid mistake. But Liam meant nothing. He was just noise. You were the one trying to save us, and I didn't see it. But I see it now. We can still go. We can use the tickets. Nathan watched her outburst with a terrifying calmness. He waited for her to stop breathing heavily. Sophia, he said, his voice level. When I reached for you at the gala, and you looked at me with that disgust, that wasn't a mistake. That was a reflex. It was the truth. He turned to the lawyer. Arthur, run through the settlement. Dr. Vance is offering a generous separation package. Arthur began, his voice dry. You will keep the penthouse for 90 days to allow you to find alternate arrangements. He will cover the mortgage during that period. You will receive a lump sum alimony payment, calculated based on the length of the marriage. In exchange, you will sign a non-disparagement agreement and relinquish any claim to his medical practice or future earnings. Sophia felt the blood drain from her face. You're kicking me out of the house. I am selling the house, Nathan corrected. It's already listed. I'm living in a corporate apartment near the hospital. I have no need for 4,000 square feet of empty space. But, where will I go? You're a smart woman, Sophia. You have a degree. You have connections, although they are currently strained. You will figure it out. You always said you wanted independence. This is what it looks like. He stood up. He buttoned his suit jacket. The meeting was over. It had taken less than 10 minutes. Nathan, please. Sophia stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. She walked around the table, reaching for his arm. Don't do this. I love you. Nathan didn't flinch this time. He didn't pull away. He simply looked down at her hand on his sleeve, then up at her eyes. You don't love me, Sophia, he said, his voice devoid of malice. You love the way I make your life work. You love the safety, but you don't love the man who provides it. He gently removed her hand from his arm. It wasn't violent. It was careful, like removing a bandage. I'm sorry about the scandal, he added, walking toward the door. But I can't fix it for you. I have a surgery in an hour. Nathan, she screamed his name as he opened the door. If you walk out, I will never forgive you. He paused in the doorway. He looked back at her, standing alone in the massive room, clutching the folder of a vacation she would never take. I know, Nathan said, but I've already forgiven myself. The door clicked shut. The sound was soft, precise, and final. Sophia stood in the silence, realizing that the man she had called cold had just burned the bridge while standing on the other side. The radiator in the fourth-floor walk-up in Alston hissed and clanked, a metallic coughing fit that woke Sophia up every night at 3 a.m. It was a far cry from the silent, radiant floor heating of the Beacon Hill penthouse, but the lease on the penthouse had expired 2 weeks ago. Sophia sat on the floor, surrounded by cardboard boxes. The room was small, smelling faintly of the previous tenant's curry and stale cigarette smoke. She held a mug of instant coffee. Her Nespresso machine hadn't fit on the tiny laminate counter. She looked at the television she had set up on a stack of books. It was tuned to CNN. The election cycle was heating up in Washington, D.C. The screen flashed to a press conference for a rising congressman from Virginia. He was young, dynamic, and flanked by his staff. And there, standing just over the congressman's right shoulder, was Liam. Sophia leaned forward, her breath catching in her throat. Liam looked better than ever. He was wearing a new suit, navy blue, sharp. He looked serious, focused, whispering something into the candidate's ear. The cheering at the bottom of the screen read, Liam Callaway, Senior Strategy Advisor. He hadn't been ruined. He hadn't been blacklisted. In the cynical world of politics, surviving a sex scandal with a senator's daughter hadn't made him a pariah. It had made him infamous, and infamy was a currency. He had spun the narrative, signed the NDAs, and traded up to a bigger market. The reporter asked the congressman a question about baggage. The camera panned to Liam. He didn't look ashamed. He smiled, a practiced, charming, predatory smile. We all have a past, Liam said smoothly, his voice filtering through the cheap TV speakers. But the important thing is that we remain focused on the future. I learned a lot in Boston. It taught me resilience. Sophia threw the remote control across the room. It hit the wall with a hollow crack, the batteries spilling out onto the scratched hardwood floor. Resilience, she screamed at the screen. You learned resilience? He had used her. He had used her name, her access, her money, and finally, her destruction to build his resume. She was just a line item on his CV, survived high-profile crisis management. She stood up, pacing the small room, feeling the walls closing in. Her phone buzzed on the floor. It wasn't a text from a friend. Those had stopped weeks ago. It was a notification from Zillow. Status update, 42, Mount Vernon Street. Status, sold. She clicked the notification. The photo of her old home, their old home, popped up. The sold banner was slapped diagonally across the image of the grand front door. The final sale price was listed for $2 million. Nathan had sold it in less than a month. He had erased the physical evidence of their decade together with the same efficiency he used to scrub in for surgery. Sophia walked to the small kitchenette window. It looked out over an alleyway where a dumpster was currently overflowing. It was raining again, a cold, miserable spring drizzle. She looked at her reflection in the dirty glass. She looked older. The highlights in her hair had grown out, revealing darker roots she couldn't afford to touch up at her usual salon. Her skin looked tired. She was no longer Mrs. Dr. Vance. She was no longer the director of the foundation. The board had asked for her resignation for the good of the organization the day after the photos leaked. She wasn't even the senator's daughter anymore. Her father had won his re-election by publicly distancing himself from her personal indiscretions. She was just Sophia, 34 years old, unemployed, divorced, alone in a sublet with a hissing radiator. She reached for her phone to call someone. Anyone. But who? Her mother was giving her space. Her friends were busy. Liam was in D.C. Nathan was gone. She looked at a box in the corner marked kitchen/miscellaneous. Sticking out of the top was the silver frame of a photo she hadn't had the heart to throw away. It was from their honeymoon in flashbacks. Nathan looking young and less tired, holding her on a boat in Capri. She walked over and pulled the photo out. She stared at Nathan's face. She remembered how safe she felt in that moment. She remembered thinking that his quietness was boring, that his stability was a cage. She looked around the cramped, peeling apartment. This wasn't a cage. This was the wild. This was the freedom she had demanded. She sat down on the floor, clutching the frame to her chest, and listened to the radiator clank. It sounded like a heart that was skipping beats, struggling to keep the room warm, failing to keep out the cold. I'm sorry, she whispered to the empty room. I'm so sorry. But the only response was the sound of the rain against the window and the muffled laughter of a couple in the apartment next door. People who were probably happy. People who probably didn't know how quickly a life could be dismantled, brick by brick. 2 years later, the autumn air in Boston was crisp, smelling of dried leaves and roasting coffee. It was the kind of day that used to signal the start of the gala season, a time of frantic dress fittings and strategic guest lists. Now, for Sophia, it just meant she needed to put on a warmer scarf before opening the shop. Sophia unlocked the glass door of the Clay Studio, a small community pottery workshop in Jamaica Plain. It was a far cry from the marble halls of the foundation. Here, the floors were covered in gray dust, the shelves lined with imperfect, lopsided bowls made by neighborhood kids, and the pay was barely enough to cover her rent in a one-bedroom walk-up. But she liked it. She liked the feeling of clay drying on her hands. It was real. It was messy. It didn't require her to be the senator's daughter. She flipped the sign to open and began wiping down the counters. Her phone buzzed, not a crisis alert, but a text from her mother, with whom she was slowly rebuilding a fragile relationship. Sunday dinner? Dad is making roast. Sophia smiled faintly. Maybe, she whispered. At noon, she took her lunch break. She walked down Center Street to grab a sandwich. The wind bit at her cheeks, reddening them. She adjusted her scarf, a simple wool blend, not cashmere. She was waiting for the light to change at the crosswalk when she saw him. He was sitting at a table outside a bistro across the street, shielded by a windbreaker glass partition. Nathan. Sophia's breath caught in her throat, a physical snag that stopped her heart for a beat. He looked different, younger. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing a thick cable-knit sweater and dark jeans. His hair was slightly longer, less severe. But the biggest difference was his posture. The rigid, military tension she had known for a decade was gone. His shoulders were relaxed. He was leaning back in his chair, basking in the weak October sun. He wasn't alone. A woman sat across from him. She wasn't a 20-year-old model. She looked to be about Nathan's age, with dark curls pulled back in a messy bun and glasses perched on her nose. She was talking animatedly, using her hands, and whatever she was saying, it was making Nathan laugh. It wasn't the polite, dry chuckle he used to give donors. It was a full, open laugh, his head thrown back, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Sophia stood frozen on the curb, the walk signal ticking down beside her. She watched as the woman reached across the table. She didn't adjust his collar. She didn't fix his appearance. She simply laid her hand over his. And Nathan didn't flinch. He didn't pull away. He turned his hand over and interlaced his fingers with hers, holding on tight. The memory of that night at the Copley Plaza crashed into Sophia. The emerald dress, the flashbulbs, the venom in her voice when she hissed, "Don't touch me." She had thought Nathan was the cold one. She had thought he was the robot incapable of intimacy. But watching him now, bathed in the golden autumn light, holding this woman's hand like it was the only anchor he needed, Sophia finally understood. He hadn't been incapable of love. He had just been starved of it. She was the frost that had stunted him. She was the one who had made him cold. And now that she was gone, he had finally bloomed. The light changed to don't walk. The traffic surged between them, buses, taxis, the noise of the city filling the gap. Sophia stepped back from the curb. She could cross the street. She could wave. She could try to say hello, to show him that she was doing okay, that she was humble now. But she didn't. She realized that the greatest kindness she could offer him was to remain a stranger. He had performed the surgery. He had cut out the rot. It would be cruel to reopen the scar. She watched for one more second as the woman wiped a crumb from Nathan's cheek, and he kissed her palm in response. Tears pricked Sophia's eyes, but they weren't hot, angry tears anymore. They were cool and quiet. "Be happy, Nathan," she whispered into the wind. She turned around and walked back toward the studio. She had a class of 6-year-olds coming in at 1 o'clock. They were making pinch pots today. It was small work. It was humble work. But it was hers to shape, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of getting her hands dirty.